Today we're talking gear. And to start off, let's talk about how we can get these types of armor. In the start, we need to get the armor. And to do that, we can find it in various different ways. For example, you can get it inside of ornate chests, inside of completion crates, inside of treasure chests, or you can also get it inside of bounty tables, for example, like this on the reward, or inside of the black market. Just make sure you have enough shards for them. You can also craft them. However, I'm gonna talk about it later because it requires something from other parts of the gear, and we'll get there when we get there. But now that you found some gear, what is all of this that I have inside of this chest? First off, gear can be divided into slots. This one is the main end, which can be used for either a sword or an axe. Axes basically have higher attack damage than swords, but swords have more attack speed. Then you have your offhand, that can be taken by the shield, a wand, or a focus. Your shield will basically have a chance of blocking attacks from mobs, or any form of damage, to be honest. Then you have wands that basically increase your ability power. And finally, for the offhand, you have the focus, which, like the wands, is a magic tool, but instead of increasing your ability power, increases your mana. Then you have all of the gear, that it's to replace your vanilla gear, and then you have a magnet, that, as the name implies, if there are items on the ground, it will suck them to you. And something that is not gear, but it's important to know about, is the trinkets, that can either hold a blue trinket, like the treasure goggles, or a red trinket like this phylactery. Not only do you have those pieces of gear, you also have varieties in the quality and the rarity. First off, I have this at level 100 just to explain something later with the modifiers, but let's talk about the piece that says whole, and that is the rarity of the gear. First off, you have Scrappy Plus, that means that this piece of gear can either hold Scrappy or anything above. Then you have Common, that is common or anything above. Rare, that is rare or anything above. Epic, which is epic or anything above, and lastly the Omega. And once you have them in your hotbar, then you can hold them, because this, as the name implies, is unidentified pieces of gear. You cannot use them. And to hold them, you need to either right click, or with the gear in your hand or inventory, you then right click on the identification stand and it automatically holds all the gear you have. And to craft it, it's basically just this recipe over here. And coming back to the rarity, what does a higher rarity actually mean for your sword? Well, first off, let's start with Scrappy. So, as you can see, besides the implicits that it's the same for every piece of gear or weapon, in this case, the sword, it has attack damage, attack speed, and durability. Well, that's all that it can hold besides Soulbound, which basically is, if you die inside of the vault with the piece of gear that has Soulbound, you won't lose that piece of gear when resurrecting. But now, for the prefixes and suffixes, which when in talking about both of them at the same time, you can also say modifiers. First off, the Scrappy one has one prefix and one suffix, and after Scrappy, every next rarity above Scrappy will increase the number of modifiers that you can have by one. For example, this common one has two suffixes and one prefix. However, it could also be two prefixes and one suffix. Then you have the rare that has two of each. Then the epic, which has three of one and two of the other. And lastly, the Omega, which has the most modifiers that a piece of gear can get, with 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. But now that we have gear, if you look at it, the prefix of this one is illager damage. However, there are not many illagers inside of the vaults, and as you should be still low level like I am in this test world, you won't even find that much to worry about, and the most common type of mobs will be undead mobs. So you don't want that modifier over there. So should I just throw away this weapon and find the new one? Well, no. There is this artisan station that, by the way, is crafted like this. And yes, it is expensive with chromatic steel, and each workstation that you'll find here will be crafted with chromatic steel, which will be expensive, but it's very useful. But coming back, you can simply throw this weapon into the vault artisan station, and using vault plating and vault bronze as fuel for this station, basically, you can reroll the modifiers. And to do that, you need to be specific with what you want to roll. First off, you have the wild focus, that basically rolls all the modifiers, be it prefix or suffix. Then you have amplifying focus that in case one of those prefix or suffix slots is empty, you can add one of them to the weapon. Then you have the nullifying focus that will take one of the modifiers at random and remove them from the sword. And these are the ones that you can find inside of the vault at level 0. And the next one you can find, it's only starting at level 30, that being the fundamental focus. And the fundamental focus rerolls the implicits. For example, as you can see, this sword has 1.6 attack speed, 6-7, and 9 attack damage. But I want to try and get 10 attack damage, so I'll roll the implicits, waiting to find a 10. But as you saw, while I was rerolling the implicits, the crafting potential of this weapon diminished. So that is where this opportunistic focus comes in. And this is one that you can start finding as soon as you start finding treasure chests, because this can only be found in treasure chests, much like resilient focus. And while the resilient rerolls the number of repairs that your piece of gear has, because you cannot permanently repair your gear, nor can you add mending to it, you need to use repair cores to repair it. And each repair core takes away one of your repair slots. The opportunistic focus makes it so that your crafting potential gets reset to the base of the weapon. So if I click, my crafting potential will be reset to 38, which is the max this sword had when I first rerolled it. After that, you can start getting chaotic focus at 50, which basically rerolls the tier of your piece of gear, and you can also only use them after level 50. That is when you can find them. And lastly, the ones that take longer to be unlocked, let's say it like that, are the waxing focus and the waning focus. The waxing focus basically rerolls only the prefixes, and the waning only the suffixes. So if you have a suffix that you kind of like this poison cloud that can be used in a poison build, you'll just take and reroll only the prefixes. Because, as I said, wild rerolls everything. Then you can remove one at random with the nullifying. Once you have an empty suffix or prefix slot, you can add one with the amplifying focus, resetting the crafting potential with the opportunistic, reroll the number of repairs with the resilient, and reroll the implicits with the fundamental. And that is one I haven't talked about, and that is the faceted. Well, faceted is interesting that you have a 100% chance of getting the modifier that is in the focus. In this case, would be a shining, but I don't have the level to have shining on my sword, so I cannot use this one in specific on this sword. And as you saw, the amount of bronze goes down faster than the amount of plating. Not only that, the lower the crafting potential you have on the piece of gear, the more bronze and plating you will lose. So be sure to not go too much under negatives, or even try to avoid negatives at all, because it starts being very costly. But what about if you get to negatives and it is indeed not a good piece of gear? Well, you'll take it and scrap it. And you'll get vault scrap, but you can also get netherite scrap and one of those faceted focus. But now let's take one piece of gear that has something empty. Let's say this one over here has one empty suffix, this sword. I can go and add an amplifying focus, but if there is one modifier in specific that I want, after doing my rerolling to get it to the best sword I can possibly get and have that one open, I can come into the modifier workbench and add the new sword in. And as you can see, there is a gold price and an amplifying focus price. So I need to have amplifying focus in my inventory as well as having a bit of gold. So once I have them, I can go and try to find one that is like this, not grayed out. So I click on it and I can use 2 gold and 2 amplifying focus to craft that modifier. And now my sword has the one with the little pickaxe, which is the crafted modifier. You only have a certain amount of modifiers at the start, and once you have the max level you can get, for example 35 on this case, 18 is not the max you can get for attack damage. You could after that unlock higher tiers, but to use those higher tiers you don't need to just get to higher level. You need to go into dungeons and find a modifier archive, where you'll right click and a little pop-up window will appear inside of the game where you'll be able to choose between 3 options of which modifier you want to unlock inside of the table. For the workstations, They are crafted like this. This is the recycler, this is the artisan station as I explained before, this is the vault forge, and this is the modifier workbench. And I haven't talked about the vault forge yet. That is because, well, it required vault scrap. And why does it require vault scrap? That is because you can use vault scrap to make vaultite ingots, and those vaultite ingots can be turned into vault alloy, and you need the vault alloy to craft your gear. But not only that, this is what you need to craft gear, naming netherite ingots, that's why this one also gives a netherite scrap, vault alloy, this for the normal pieces of gear, then you have magnetite ingots that is used to craft the magnets, and alexandrite, vault diamonds, and trinket scrap are used to recraft trinkets that you have already found before. And the found I don't mean have in your inventory, but rather hold the trinket. And all of them also use vault gold, so having a lot of vault gold is important. But now let's hover our mouses above this silhouette we have on top. And as you can see, I have 0% shield proficiency, which means I have not crafted any shield, because let's say I craft one. Now I have a shield that in the hole, instead of saying one of the rarities, it instead says beginner, which is the type of crafter, let's say I am in terms of shields, meaning I don't have high proficiency. But I have some proficiency on my chestplate already, so if I craft the chestplate, it will say novice. And the higher your proficiency with crafting, the higher your hole will be. And higher holes means that the chance of getting a better rarity on your gear is better. And at certain points, you even stop being able to haul below rare or common. All of this depending on your proficiency. But it does cost a lot because, as you saw, I crafted a shield and only got 0.2% of the proficiency. So if you want to level this up, be prepared to spend a lot, and I do mean a lot, of materials. And this about sums up all about gear. Well, mostly, because there is one other aspect that to me is the late game of gear, which is transmogrification, aka I can take a piece of gear from here, take it into the transmogrification table, and as long as I have found and hold a piece of gear with one appearance or one design, I can come back to the transmogrification table and change the appearance of the piece of gear I want to its new appearance. For example, I have this robe, but I might want something a bit more archmage. I can simply try and find something that would fit that theme. Maybe this is more priestly. I need to go into this table and use Vault Bronze and select one of the appearances. However, I have found all of them in this world or unlocked all of them, but you might find some grayed out, and those are the ones that you have yet to find. There are a lot of ways to find pieces of gear, not just rolling. It can be in other ways too, but that is a bit for you to explore because it can either be due to Easter eggs inside of the vault or unlocking mods. So yeah, the late game of gear is all about fashion. So test your builds, test your gear, and try to come up with the best build for yourself. And I know I said at the start that I would try and make one video about this Vault Hunters Academy a day, but that's proving to be a bit more difficult than I expected. So I will reduce it to 2 a week maximum, maybe with some other video thrown in a mix. But thank you for watching and bye.